glorious geeks. There is a lot of crazy news this week and I am feeling especially snarky, so let's get to it. Please hit the subscribe button below, follow us, and like this video. It means the world. I know you've all been feeling restless at home lately, and I hear ya. My husband is lucky he's still alive. He's taping this right now and he has such an angry look on his face. Well, unfortunately, the US is kind of the virus pariah in the world right now, which is insane since the US passport was one of the most coveted in the world, and now it's practically a piece of paper that gets you to the Caribbean. Most countries don't want us visiting since they view us as all vectors of the virus, so I figured I'd pull together a list for you of the hottest places to fulfill your wanderlust. Kind of like the New York Times 52 places to go, but it's my list of good luck traveling there. There are only about 45 places Americans can travel to right now, and unfortunately, most of them have some kind of State Department warning. For example, Turkey is open to Americans. It's my favorite government to criticize. The latest news out of Turkey, aside from the fact that their president is sending terrorists to kill Armenians, is a testimony by a Turkish defector who claims he was ordered to kill a Kurdish Austrian politician in Austria. If this is true, it shows what the Turkish president is capable of doing and how far he'll go to target his enemies. Brazil is also open to Americans. It has the third highest infection rate, and an unprecedented amount of its land this year has been burned to the ground. And yet Brazilian President Bolsonaro's popularity is surging right now. You could go to Belarus and join the brave people who've been protesting for 2 months against a rigged election robbed by Europe's last dictator, Alexander Lukashenko. This week, he threatened to use live ammunition against protesters after Europe just announced it would impose sanctions on him and his leaders. Looks like they need to move a little bit faster on those sanctions. Pakistan is also welcoming Americans. Pakistan is also one of the most dangerous countries in the world because of the terrorist groups that are based there, groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Haqqani network. Last year, Pakistan and India came this close to war over the disputed Himalayan territory of Kashmir, and unfortunately, the area still has skirmishes here and there. You could also go to Egypt. The Egyptians actually just found and opened a 2,600-year-old sarcophagus that had a mummy inside. We all told them to wait until 2021, but luckily nothing seems off about this mummy, for now. The Egyptian government is also one of the worst human rights abusers. An author they arrested a month ago for criticizing Egypt's president on Facebook died right after he was released, and people say he may have been poisoned. I could go on, but I'm not a very good travel agent, and to be fair, there are a handful of great countries you can go to that are safe. I'll link to the map on my Twitter and Instagram. But the point here is that there are 195 countries in the world, and we're basically only allowed in a quarter of them, nearly half of which are Caribbean islands. Being viewed as this international pariah and being isolated this way is just kind of embarrassing. The US prides itself on being the leader of the free world and on spearheading global efforts in every kind of field, but now no one wants us at the party because they view us all as super spreaders. The moral of the story? Wash your hands and wear your damn mask. So President Trump won an interesting endorsement. The spokesperson for the Taliban, which is an Afghan terrorist organization, told CBS News that they hope Trump will win the election. The Taliban. If a group of terrorists endorse me for anything, I'm pretty sure I'd take that as a hint that I'm doing something wrong. Now, I know it's fun to poke fun of, but for the record, Trump's campaign absolutely rejected the Taliban support. Trump last week tweeted that he plans on bringing our troops stationed in Afghanistan home by Christmas. The tweet kind of came out of left field, and it surprised the defense officials, and it goes against an agreement the US made with the Taliban back in February, in which the US would gradually pull US troops out of Afghanistan based on conditions, like the Taliban reducing violence and denouncing ties to Al-Qaeda and other extremist groups. The Taliban wants nothing more than US troops to get the hell out of there, so that they can more easily take control of certain areas and impose their repressive rules. So Trump's tweet is what spurred their ringing endorsement. Now the Afghan government is afraid that if Trump goes through with this, the country could fall back into full-scale war. It also undermines the peace talks the Afghan government is currently holding with the Taliban because this is the main thing the Taliban wants. As it is, these talks have gone nowhere, and with this move, Trump took away the Afghan government's only bargaining chip. Meanwhile, the Taliban hasn't improved its behavior anyway. Since the February peace deal with the US, they've pursued a new wave of violence, they've killed thousands in terrorist attacks, and they've assassinated high-profile leaders. Which is, by the way, why moms say you never negotiate with a terrorist. I mean a toddler, because this is what they do. So here's the deal. At the end of the day, the United States doesn't want to be sitting in Afghanistan forever. We don't want our troops abroad in danger zones, especially when the mission is not really being achieved. And both Trump and Biden want to withdraw troops from Afghanistan. A few days after Trump's tweet, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff wouldn't give a timeline on withdrawing troops and just said that the US would work to end the war responsibly. It's all kind of a cluster now, and at the end of the day, we do need to leave Afghanistan, but we need to do it in an orderly, strategic, and carefully deliberate manner so as not to make the situation even worse. Geeks, I don't know if you heard this, but the UN Human Rights Council has just been promoted to a new name called the UN Human Rights Abusers Club. This week, China, Russia, and Cuba were elected to the Human Rights Council. I probably don't need to tell you that these are literally among the world's worst human rights offenders, but since you asked, I'll give you a quick rundown of what these lovelies are up to. China's in the middle of trying to wipe out an entire culture by imprisoning and abusing ethnic Uyghurs. They're also on a roll trying to clamp down on protesters in Hong Kong who are fighting for freedom and democracy. I haven't even touched on how they silence and detain dissidents and anyone who speaks up in China. Russia is busy poisoning oppositionists who speak out against the government. They jail individuals from the LGBTQ community, and they threaten journalists who try to expose government scandals. Cuba is a full-on police state. This is a government that doesn't even allow its people to have internet because, God forbid, they see how life is outside of communism. Thankfully, Saudi Arabia didn't make it to the Human Rights Council, though it actually expected to. Saudi Arabia continues to detain and torture female activists, like those who fought for the freedom to drive, and they harass and even kill dissidents. Let's not forget how they brutally murdered Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi for being a critic of the monarchy. Okay, so before I start sounding shrill, I've clearly made my point that the UN Human Rights Council is an utter joke. But is it needed? I mean, do we need this absolutely feckless organization that is now legitimizing human rights abusers? Well, technically, yes. You do need an international body that holds human rights abusers accountable so that they stop and so that others are deterred from behaving similarly. And that's what the UN Human Rights Council does, or supposed to do. But it's not going to do it against its own members, which is why these thugs try to get on it. So clearly the process to get on this council needs to be burnt to the ground and rebuilt. Look, I know I complain a lot about the UN, but that's only because it's so broken and yet so needed. The Trump administration withdrew the US from the UN Human Rights Council a few years ago, arguing that the agency is a joke, which they've clearly proven. But given the latest takeover by so many human rights abusers, our experiment looks like it's failing. Our absence prevents us from fighting for what's right, and that's a critical voice to have there when you're speaking for the voiceless. I asked the Glorious Geeks what you all thought, and 100% of you thought it was a mistake for the US to leave. It pains me to do this, but until it gets its act together, the UN Human Rights Council is on my list this week. This past Sunday was the International Day of the Girl, and so in honor of this day, I'd like to highlight this awesome nonprofit that is absolutely crushing it called ZanaAfrica, which was founded by my friend Megan McCuria. ZanaAfrica is an American foundation that supports the health, safety, and well-being of girls in Kenya and allows them to access their own power and potential, all by providing free sanitary pads and providing reproductive health education. Sounds kind of simple, right? Like, how can such a simple thing we take for granted here literally change the life of a girl in Africa? These girls already live in a society where they are unequal, but once they hit puberty, that inequality grows even bigger. By providing them with sanitary pads, something most of their families can't even afford, and teaching them about reproductive health, and also giving them a network of people they can reach out to, ZanaAfrica is empowering these girls with the tools they need to take control of their own lives. So for example, they can continue their schooling, avoid teen pregnancy, and understand they have the right to say no to sex and report gender-based violence. Unfortunately, having girls stuck at home because of the pandemic has only made things harder for these girls, with teen pregnancies, child marriage, and rape, which underscores the need for this organization all the more. The reason this matters to you is because we live in a much more interconnected world than you think. And in order to ensure a stable and prosperous world led by good leaders, we have to ensure young women and girls are protected, not just in the US, but everywhere. It's amazing how much power is stored in a sanitary pad, right? To donate and get more involved with this fabulous organization, please check out ohmyworld.tv. Geeks! I look forward every week to giving you the escape you need from our nonsensical domestic news. Hopefully by showing you how crazy things are outside the United States, it can make you feel like things here are a bit more normal, or at least just not as crazy. Please hit the subscribe button and like this video, leave me a comment or question, and please follow Oh My World and me on Instagram and Twitter. Stay fabulous, geeks!